Support for WABE comes from Ameris Bank. No matter where you are on your financial journey, Ameris Bank is by your side and committed to financial peace of mind. Whether you need help with business, personal, or mortgage banking, we're with you. Ameris Bank, Equal Housing Lender, member FDIC. And from Arnold Golden Gregory. AGG's payments attorneys partner with payment acquirers and card issuers to reduce risk and navigate regulatory challenges. For AGG, it isn't asking if, it's figuring out how. AGG.com.
I'm Deepa Fernandez. An Oregon lawmaker says some parents are concerned students with disabilities are not getting equal access to school.
I just can't believe that in 2023, I am actually fighting an uphill battle to allow disabled children to attend kindergarten.
What's behind the use of abbreviated school days? That's next time on Here and Now, this afternoon at 3 on 90.1 WABE.
I'm Imari Kennedy, and I live in the south side of Fulton County. WABE is online, on TV, and on the radio.
WABE Atlanta.
From WABE in Atlanta, this is Closer Look for Friday, March 24th. I'm Rose Scott. It's an ongoing controversy. A proposed $90 million public safety training center located on 85 acres of Atlanta-owned forest land, but in unincorporated DeKalb County. Their support and opposition.
The new public safety training facility will help boost the morale, increase our recruitment efforts, and also retain our current officers.
We don't need to take paradise and put in another parking lot, or in this case, even worse, a parking lot with guns, assault rifles, machine guns, bombs, helicopters, noise.
Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens explains the city's desire to keep the lease agreement. Plus, the ACLU of Georgia plans to sue the state over legislation that bans certain medical and hormone treatments for transgender kids. I'll speak with a law professor who says there are merits to a constitutional challenge. That's ahead, but first, this news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. An attorney for former President Trump is at the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. to appear before a grand jury. NPR's Ryan Lucas reports the case centers around the possible mishandling of classified documents found at Trump's Florida home.
TV cameras and a gaggle of journalists greeted Trump attorney Evan Corcoran as he arrived at the federal courthouse in D.C. His appearance before the grand jury comes after a legal fight over whether Corcoran should have to provide certain testimony and materials sought by special counsel Jack Smith in his investigation into the Mar-a-Lago documents and possible obstruction. Corcoran was a central figure in the back and forth last year between Trump and the Justice Department over government documents stored at Mar-a-Lago. The tussle over Corcoran's testimony revolved around questions of attorney-client privilege, but courts so far have sided with prosecutors and ordered him to appear. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
The U.S. military is dismissing claims by China that it repelled a Navy destroyer patrolling the South China Sea. NPR's Emily Fang has more.
China's defense ministry said it had given the USS Milius a warning to leave as it sailed through the waters of the South China Sea and monitored it until it departed. The South China Sea is where China has built up military outposts for at least the last decade. It's also where China has staked out competing sovereignty claims in conflict with those of neighboring Southeast Asian countries. The U.S. military denied that China had expelled the ship earlier this week, saying it was conducting routine operations in the South China Sea, and that the United States will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows. Emily Fang, NPR News, Taipei.
In Minnesota, water containing radioactive material has leaked for the second time from a nuclear plant. Xcel Energy says the leak of what's believed to be hundreds of gallons of water containing tritium was discovered this week from a temporary fix at the Monticello nuclear generating plant, where 400,000 gallons of water with tritium also leaked in November. That plant, nearly 40 miles northwest of Minneapolis, is scheduled to power down today so permanent repairs can begin. The company claims there's no risk to the public. Shares of Germany's largest bank are down sharply today in European trading amid ongoing concerns about the banking sector. NPR's Rob Schmitz has more from Berlin.
Deutsche Bank shares plummeted following a spike in credit default swaps, a form of insurance for a company's bondholders against its default. The German lender's shares retreated for a third consecutive day and have lost more than a fifth of their value so far this month. This comes in the wake of Switzerland's emergency rescue of Credit Suisse by rival bank UBS, a move that European regulators hoped would help calm the markets.
NPR's Rob Schmitz reporting. Wall Street is trading lower at this hour. The Dow is flat, down about 13 points. The Nasdaq is down 52. You're listening to NPR News. Life expectancy in the United States has been on the decline in recent years. As NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin reports, a group of researchers wants the federal government to do more to try to reverse the trend.
American life expectancy is now 76. In country rankings, the U.S. is lower than Slovenia and Lebanon. This month, new studies show U.S. maternal mortality hit a near record in 2021, and child and adolescent mortality is on the rise in America, too. Stephen Wolf, professor emeritus at Virginia Commonwealth University, led a group of researchers who published a study on these trends in 2013. He says the National Institutes of Health could do more research on what works to extend healthy life in a population.
If a Martian came down to Earth and saw this situation, it would be very intuitive.
You would look at other countries that have been able to solve this problem, he says, and apply the lessons learned.
1 minute.
Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News.
New orders for manufactured goods rose unexpectedly last month. The Commerce Department says orders for non-defense capital goods, excluding aircraft, rose 0.2% in February. But January's numbers were revised lower, showing core capital goods orders actually rose 0.3%, not the 0.8% rise first reported by the Commerce Department. That data suggests business spending on equipment could be struggling to rebound in the first quarter.
30 seconds.
Crude oil prices are trading lower at this hour, down 1.2%. I'm Janine Herbst, and you're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and
10
Jarl
seconds.
and Pamela Moan, thanking the people who make public radio great every day, and also those who listen.
From WABE in Atlanta, welcome to this edition of Closer Look. I'm Rose Scott. Coming up on today's program, in just a moment, Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens joins me to discuss the controversial public safety training facility. Will his call for a community task force ease public tension, and especially following the death of a protester? Plus, we'll get his reaction to an independent review that says the city, if they want to, can break the lease with the Atlanta Police Foundation. That's in just a moment. Then later in the program, now that Governor Brian Kemp has signed Senate Bill 140, which bans most medical and hormone treatments for transgender kids to affirm their gender identity, the ACLU of Georgia plans to sue the state over the legislation. I'll speak with a law professor about the merits of a constitutional challenge. That's later on Closer Look, but we now begin with yet another controversial topic that's been in the news for some years now. It's a city issue, it's a community issue, it's a city and community issue. The $90 million training center located on 85 acres of city-owned forest land in unincorporated DeKalb County. In 2021, more than 1,000 comments were recorded from the public.
The new public safety training facility will help boost the morale, increase our recruitment efforts, and also retain our current officers.
We don't need to pave paradise and put in another parking lot, or in this case, even worse, a parking lot with guns, assault rifles, machine guns, bombs, helicopters, noise.
And that was from a city council meeting that actually lasted 2 days. The vote to lease this property to the Atlanta Police Foundation would fall upon the Atlanta City Council. It passed, 10 in favor and 4 against. And so much has happened since that vote. Continued protests and violent clashes between some protesters and law enforcement. And also,
it's a simple fact that law enforcement was doing a clearing operation, a legal operation, removing people illegally occupying a property.
10
and
seconds.
Someone on the property, as law enforcement came into view, initiated fire on the law enforcement entities, and they returned fire.
now the shooting death of 26-year-old Emmanuel Tehran, who along with others was camping in the forested area of the site. This took place on January 18th. According to the GBI, an officer killed Tehran during a, quote, multi-agency sweep to clear the site of the future public safety training center. While still under investigation, the GBI contends Tehran fired first and was killed when officers returned fire. Tehran's family has filed a lawsuit amid an independent autopsy that suggests Tehran was shot at least 13 times while sitting with their hands up. And so much has happened in just the past few months. So let's talk about all this. Joining me now in studio, Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens. Mr. Mayor, thank you for taking time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on here, Rose, and thank you for all that you're doing to talk about this meaningful topic.
Let's go back, because I think it's important that we try to lay all this out as much as we can in the time that I have with you. I want to go back to that September 8th, 2021 vote. City Council votes to approve leasing these 85 acres of city-owned land to the Atlanta Police Foundation by a vote of 10-4. You and your fellow council members, you listened to 17 hours of public comment, most in opposition of this facility. There was some in favor of it being built. At any point, did you consider voting no? Was there anything in your mind that said, maybe we need to step back and get more information?
Yeah, I can remember this process quite clearly. It was September when the vote was finalized 10-4 by my council colleagues and I. I was running for mayor at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, we were virtual for council meetings. So we were all at our independent homes, individual houses, and people were outside my house banging on pots and pans saying, "Stop Cop City." And they were very loud and they were trying to come on property. And it was, a tense moment. The same activists or more were involved then, and they were saying, we don't want this. And I know that there were community members that said they wanted it. So at a certain point throughout the year, I'm paying attention to what's going on and I'm asking questions. And I remember when we went down the path of really diving deep into it. And we made some corrections. We improved what was already out there because council members, including myself, were asking questions. And it was going to be 150 acres out of 381 acres that was going to be used for Public Safety Training Center. We had them redesign it, and it came down to 85 acres out of the 381 acres. And the 85 acres that were chosen were the acres that already had uses that were in place before, whether that was the police academy or the various, uses that had cleared the property before. So we felt more comfortable that this was going into a place that was least damaging to the community.
So getting it down from 150 to 85, was that the sole criteria for you that you wanted that led to your decision to vote in favor of it?
Oh no, not just that. Well, one was, being on city council for 8 years at that point, you knew that the police training academy that we currently had was in horrible conditions. I've been there before.
Is that the
and
one
then-
on Moreland?
Well, no, the one that's on South Side, at 180 South Side, the Herbert T. Jenkins location, which is almost right at the edge of Atlanta, almost in Hateville. It is, it had mold, it had mildew. It was raining on the inside of it, and had, and so that was no longer useful. And then our fire facility was condemned. So our firefighters are going outside of the city to learn how to be firefighters. And
So you needed a new facility.
we needed new facilities, and we currently need new facilities.
Did you review this lease agreement? And we should note this was signed by then Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. Did you review this lease agreement between the city and the Police Foundation prior or after Mayor Bottoms signed this agreement?
We looked at it as it was a part of the overall, legislation for this project. So everything that we were going to do there, the funding of it, the financing of it, the leases, so everything was all on the table to explore.
I'm curious though, again, with all the public comment, and you've been on city council, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because I've covered you all for a long time. Don't know if I can remember. I know there's a lot of public comment about the stadium, but 17 hours.
Yeah, that was a long time. Now, I'll just, not to dismiss what 17 hours means, but remember, this was all virtual. So there's never been a time where, whether it's a stadium or whether it's sewers or whether it's anything else, that people could do that just by sitting at home and making a phone call and pressing, yes, or, just talking for 3 minutes. But coming down there in person did not happen, which normally would
You think that might have swayed your vote?
No, I don't think it would have swayed. I don't think but I'm saying when you say it was 17 hours, there's no precedent for people coming in person for 17 hours. But the phone, when you could just leave a voicemail,
which folks did,
and folks left voicemails from anywhere. It could have been in Atlanta, could have been outside of Atlanta.
Well, let me ask you this, because is this considered an economic development project? Because there are some other concerns about where this falls. It is being built by the Police Foundation. But this is not a city of Atlanta per se entity.
Right. So this is in DeKalb County on land that we've owned for decades. This was the site of the previous Atlanta Police Academy built by Maynard Jackson in 1974 and beyond. This is where current officers right now are trained. They are training right now on how to their guns are. This is where they learn to fire and be certified. This is where your current police chief got certified at. So there are individuals that are on our force right now that was trained there. And so, this property being utilized for no, it's not for economic development, but it's also a big park that's going to be built there. Right now, it's a dumping ground. This
Right.
park area that is sealed, it's supposed to be sealed off, but it's not sealed. People go there all the time, throw refrigerators, cars are in there, paint cans, tires. So we're bringing that back to have it utilized as a park, a 300-acre park.
But I want to be very clear, did you review this lease agreement that Mayor Bottoms signed? Did you have
Yeah,
Did he-
yeah, we looked at I looked at everything. Yes.
Did anything stand out to you that might have been
Tell me what
problematic?
you're leading me towards.
Well, if you reviewed it, then you would know if something stood out to you. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing stands out. So
You have no problem with the lease.
I voted for it.
Okay. I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can vote for stuff and people don't read. I mean,
Uh,
did you read the 600 pages of the Gulch?
I voted no against the Gulch.
But did you read it?
I read it. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the history of what you perceive city council people to be, but we read, I read, and I still have to read. I voted against the Gulch and I voted for the public safety training.
And that's why I just
center.
wanted.
And so there's no rubber stamps here.
Right, I
There's
just
a
want to be
critical
clear, but I want to
assessment.
give you an opportunity to
Yeah.
put it on the record. So you read it.
Yeah.
This past February, while participating in, I think it was Atlanta Press Club, luncheon in Buckhead, and you said 69% of Atlantans support this training center.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, where do you get that number from?
Yeah, so we poll things often. So even during the election cycle, remember, so I want to be very clear about this. I voted for the Public Safety Training Center and still won an election of Atlantans by 64%. So to be clear, the people knew that I was for this Public Safety Training Center, allowed me to be their mayor. And at that time, we had polled voters, people that live in Atlanta and vote. I'm not talking about people in any other country, I'm not talking about the Canadian that was here last week protesting or the Frenchman that was here last
Let's
week.
talk about Atlanta.
Talking about Atlantans that
So
voted.
this information comes from folks that you all polled after you were elected, or
Both during we polled things often.
and where was this survey? How did you conduct this survey?
So you do it just like you do any other campaign to find out who you're going to vote for, to find out what's the approval rating of anybody. So you go out there and you make phone calls, and I don't do it. Obviously, it's an outside.
So
entity that
your
does it.
campaign put the survey together.
Not necessarily. Well, and during my campaign put the survey together. Yeah.
The reason why I want to ask
Yeah.
how this survey was conducted, because then there's a new survey, from the city. You're all using, I think, Survey Monkey to collect data, which
I don't know about this.
You
I
only-
don't use Survey Monkey for.
well, somebody
data.
from your department is, because one could argue
From my department.
well, from the city. Because my question is this a fair way to collect data? I mean, I could take a survey from Survey Monkey 18 times, 26 times. So I want you to understand where I'm going with this in
Sure.
terms of when you say 69% of Atlantans support this training center.
Yeah, we didn't use Survey Monkey for that.
Just want to get that out. And
yeah,
okay.
Because guess what? Think about it. When I was running for mayor, I was polling at 4%,
Mhm.
and we knew it, and I ended up winning by 64%. We wouldn't take Survey Monkey for that. You go to voters in a very particular way to be able to get how do you understand the public, mentality towards something.
Okay, but then there's this Emory University poll
Sure.
that found 48% of Atlantans support the training center. For Black residents, the poll found support to be even lower at 43.5%, and white residents at 55%. I'm giving you all this information so we now can move
Mhm.
to this. What does that say to you?
Yeah, I haven't reviewed the Emory poll. I mean, I don't know if it was a poll or a survey. I don't know
It's a
where
poll, yeah.
I don't know where they captured their data from or how they framed the question. I remember the time that we asked Public Safety Training Center, and then we came right back and asked Cop City to be able to know, how people view this in either terminology. And it was a slight difference between when you use different terminology, but nonetheless, I mean, without it in front of me and like critically looking at the poll, I would tell you that when I knock on doors around that community, when I go to Boulder Walk when I went to.
And you went around that community.
Yes, and I go to and recently, like this week, Boulder Walk on Sunday. Wednesday, I was at the
How many
gates of
doors you
Boulder
knock
Cross.
on?
I don't know, maybe 2,000, 3,000 doors. By the time I get out there, everybody's out there, so I can't keep knocking because people start, we having full-fledged conversations on the street.
Did you encounter people who did not want?
Oh yeah, I
And-
encountered several that were in favor, some that were not in favor, and many that were saying, "Hey, I'm in favor, but can we do more of this?" And I say, "Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about it."
You stand by this lease agreement that it is in the best interest of the city of Atlanta.
Yeah. So Rose, I mean, let's you're harping on a lease agreement, and we're talking about the overall
Well,
safety
there's a
of the
reason.
citizens of
There's a
Atlanta.
reason I'm harping on the lease agreement, and then we're going to get to all this. So let's.
Yeah, I mean, but I can re-answer every question you want 4 or 5
Absolutely.
times about the lease agreement, and we could talk about safety in this community. We could talk about what the voters have asked me to do to make sure that the city is
Nope.
prepared.
I have never had anyone say they don't want to be safe in the city.
Yeah.
So the conversation is about the agreement and whether or not this facility needs to be in this community, where there is a split opinion about whether or not it needs to be in this facility.
Sure.
And that's what we're here to talk about, right?
Well, that's different than what the third time you asked me about the lease. So
That's why I'm asking. So you know,
Yeah.
you're getting ahead, and I'm being fair. So that's why I'm asking. You support everything in the lease because let's just go there. According to independent review, the mayor has the authority to terminate the lease. So the question is, do you want to terminate the lease agreement? Or do you think this facility needs to be in this community, and that's why you won't terminate the lease agreement?
Yeah, so we have so the city council approved the legislation to allow us to have the public safety training center. It comes with the lease, lease to the Atlanta Police Foundation to be able to go out there, raise money so that they can construct this project. So that way we don't have to spend all the money to be able to do this. And so others can help, philanthropy and others can help build this thing out. So I support the lease so that we can construct something that that we need. And so the question about it being, do I support all of it? I mean, if there's something that I need to be made aware of, I am very comfortable with people giving me advice, which is why we created the task force to share more ideas with me.
We're going to get to that in a moment. Do you support this facility being in this community?
Yeah, I do. And I think that, it's interesting because this has been here for 50 plus years. It was a public safety, it was a police academy before that. And then there was a prison farm on one side and a police academy. To this day, right now, the police of Atlanta are learning how to shoot guns out there. And we have decided to move that aspect of it from outside that area to another area on the other side. We also currently, this is where explosives are detonated out that area. And we no longer are doing that.
Right. So you're no longer doing that.
And so what I'm going to tell you is these neighborhoods are 20 years old. This facility is 40, 50 years old. This encroachment happened. And so now we're making provisions to improve what happens in the neighborhood that came after all these things have been there for
Does
decades.
it matter how long it's been there if there is a percentage of folks who do not want this facility to be built in this community?
Well, so if you're in Cobb County, you have a facility, one separate for fire, one for police. If you're in Gwinnett County, you have one for fire and you have one for police. In Brookhaven, they have one. In all around this metro area, you have police training facilities. On the north side too, because we like to throw around this is in a Black community, and we can put.
Well, no one's throwing it around. It is what it is.
Right, but I'm saying that in other communities there are non-Black communities that have a police training center.
They're in residential areas.
In Cobb and Gwinnett. This was not residential when it started.
But it is now.
It is now. So let's find. Okay, so tell me where you would like us to place this. Which neighbors do you want this to be?
That's not my job to tell
Exactly.
you. However,
Yeah.
it is my job to tell you what we hear from the community. Now, I want to go back to an interview.
And I hear from the community too.
I want to go back to an interview you did with Ebony. And I had to look it up because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't misquoting you. And they asked you about affordable housing. And in that, your answer there, you said, we have 800 acres of vacant land across the city that the city owns in various locations, and we would partner with for-profit and nonprofit developers. You say, because it is government land, we don't have to make a profit off of it. You go on to say that it's for the best interest, the will of the city to make sure we use our land in the best interest of the city.
Right.
Someone has lost their life. An officer was seriously injured. Had a community forum yesterday. We speak to folks. We ask folks to come on this program. You have a lot of folks who do not want this in this community. They're not saying we don't want a facility. They say we don't want it in our community. And I'm asking you at any point, can y'all consider putting this facility somewhere else?
Okay. So two things, about three things in there. One, it's sad that an individual lost their life and another individual was shot near that facility. It happened in DeKalb County. To be clear, it did not happen on the site of the Public Safety Training Center. It did not happen on Atlanta land or Atlanta-owned land. It did not happen by the hands of Atlanta Police Department. This was Georgia State Patrol, and we are, waiting on the results of the GBI investigation. And so I want to be very clear, because people say this happened at the site. It did not happen at the site. It happened in DeKalb County. There's a lot of things that
In the
people have been
forested area.
protesting from a land swap that DeKalb had, from a movie studio DeKalb had. A lot of things were out there that were going on. So to be very clear, this did not happen on the site of the Public Safety Training Center. And so that's one thing. The second thing is, as it relates to the desire to use public land for affordable housing, that's what we're doing. I created a strike force. We're building on. That's why we did all that work at Forest Cove. That's why we're building at Herndon. That's why we're building at Bowen Home Civic Center on MARTA property, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, inside the city of
and
Atlanta.
the same energy that you are using because people want it, it's needed. That same energy for people who do not want this facility in the neighborhood, but you're not you're not going to, you don't, are you, do you think you all should consider, you have a task force. Let's get to that.
Yeah.
What if the task force comes back and says, Mayor, we think you should build this somewhere else. You and the Atlanta Police Foundation should build this somewhere else. Would you accept that?
Again, another two-part question. One, you were talking about affordable housing being built in places where people say they want it, and then also affordable housing being built in places people say they didn't want it. So the city has to do what's in the best interest of all that's going on. There are literally active conversations right now of community members saying, I don't want that 40 to 50 unit complex that housing unit that you're building for people that are experiencing homelessness. We don't want homeless people in our neighborhood, or you got too many of these centers in our area. Other folks have said we don't need no more affordable housing in our neighborhood. We have to delicately walk through that and say there's so much need for affordable housing, so much need for people to have housing that are experiencing homelessness, that your neighborhood or at least your district may actually get one of these centers. So there have been government supported decisions to build things where community have been split.
But you won't have to use APD personnel to patrol an affordable housing unit that gets built.
No, because the affordable housing unit didn't have Molotov cocktails thrown at it, rocks, fireworks, and industrial equipment burned up at Michelle Obama Park 2 years ago by protesters in DeKalb and in Atlanta.
This 85 acres is owned currently by Atlanta Police Foundation. Or
yes.
you
Well, the city of Atlanta owns it.
But you're going to lease it to them.
Right.
Are they kicking anything to help with security?
The police foundation has they have to construct this thing, and so we have to make sure
they're spending about 60 million, right?
Yeah, thereabouts, right?
Y'all are kicking in 32, the latest.
Correct. So the safety of property and people is the city of Atlanta's responsibility, just like DeKalb has to provide it for the DeKalb side. So the police foundation is not in the police. They can't have police.
But you have to have extra personnel
Mm-hmm.
to patrol this area now because of the violent clashes.
Correct.
And you and Chief Sherburne have told me we're down hundreds of officers.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're taking those officers possibly away from patrolling zone 2, zone 1, zone 5, whatever, Buckhead folks. So now you have to use those officers down there.
Absolutely. We have gone on 12-hour shifts at times. These officers have had to be away from their families at times because of protests that have occurred downtown and down at the center proposed site. And yet we have worked hard with this new chief to make sure that today, as you stand, we are down 50 plus% in homicides, down 60 some percent in rapes, down 20 some percent in aggravated assaults, and 20 some percent in burglaries. So even while we're managing these protests, we are also working with community members and police to help make sure that people are safe by de-escalating things, but also by making sure we lock up gang members, et cetera.
Again, no one has said that public safety is not important. The core of this conversation is about how do you all as a city and the community and the Atlanta Police Foundation come together and work through, because there's an issue here.
Correct.
So with this task force,
yeah,
and I feel like I've interviewed all of them.
Because you do a good job of getting across the community, Rose.
Well, I feel like I've interviewed all of them, and they all say the same thing. What is the goal of this newer task force?
Yeah, so 40 plus, I think it's like 41 as of this morning, individuals have said yes to join this task force. Most of them are community members that are either in the space of parks and green space, social justice, or people that are in environmental protection or sustainability. And there's, even individuals that are just neighbors and community members. So it is indeed a diverse. I've gotten, fire emojis for people that say this is a great task force committee members. And these are the folks that are supposed to be the subject matter experts. This is still on top of the longstanding community stakeholder advisory committee, which is people in the neighborhoods, the 6 neighborhoods in DeKalb and the 6 neighborhoods, individuals across Atlanta that have already been meeting for a year, that have already made substantial improvements to this property. So all of the above are going to inform our decisions. And I want to be able to have them give us initial responses, initial advice by July 1.
What if that advice is, Mr. Mayor, it's the best interest if y'all build this somewhere else?
You know what I do? I say, okay, let's do a committee or some study to find out where else is there in the whole city that you can build that the people that's going to be within a half mile of it won't say the same thing that these folks are saying. But I'd be open to that discussion. I'm open to it right now.
You are.
There are people who have said go to somewhere like, let's say, Fulton Industrial. I've heard all of Fulton Industrial.
It's a lot of land out there.
Most of it ain't Atlanta, though, right?
So with some of this one Atlanta.
Exactly, either. But that's the thing.
But it's not near a residential.
And you have to go
area.
buy that. You have to go procure that, and then you have to own that. Then you have to figure out.
You got some wayward squirrels and some trucks out there, and squirrels will be okay because they travel. So
yeah.
The argument is you're open to it.
Yeah. But Rose, remind yourself that what we're talking about here is just movement for the hyped up allegations that we're going to have Black Hawk helicopters. You heard somebody say helicopters. They said bombs and all these other things. So what you're trying to remove is not all that.
So clear that
people
up.
Are saying.
Let folks know, because it is it's a fire and police training center.
Right. Yeah. So this is.
So what is being reported that you think is just absolutely not true about this facility?
I appreciate that. So the current fire facility that we have does not allow our firefighters to be certified in the city of Atlanta on the burn building is what it's called. It is condemned, our current burn building. So we go somewhere else to learn those steps on how to put out a fire to get to your house at a second story, a third story, a fourth story apartment, how to get up there on a ladder and move around and go through your house to save you. Those things are being conducted in other places and temporary boxes that are in Atlanta that we need to make permanent. And so we also don't have a facility for firefighters to know how to drive ladder trucks and engines to be able to get to you in an emergency. Most of the responses that firefighters go on are your heart, you're having a heart attack, you're having chest pains, etc. 75,000 calls last year. How to drive real fast and get to the place. And so we need a obstacle course for police and firefighters.
I have not heard anyone say y'all do not need better training. Let's be really clear, because that's the whole issue of better policing that doesn't harm people of color potentially, especially
or anybody.
But let's be really clear. So you need a whole lot of land. Do all that. Well, you could probably do more out there on Fulton Industrial, couldn't you?
So You got fire, you got police. You also have to have room for the community. This is the neighbors have asked for the same thing we were saying we would provide, which is space for the community to meet, to have their neighborhood watch programs, to be able to have Citizens Police Academy, places where police and citizens
So
can
you
learn
could you have that without the other more hard and intense training, which people are opposed to?
So what you're saying is there's other places in the in this region that has a fire location that's X number of acres, and then there's a police location that's X number of acres, and then you go somewhere else and learn how to drive X number of acres. You combine all that, you get to what I say. This is 85 acres, which still a considerable portion of it is preserved for trees and walking trails and pavilions that and a horse pasture for the stalls, because right now we also have stables for horses that is out of
And
can't be utilized
the
for
horses
long.
need listen.
And so
I
when we
know.
say 85 acres, it's not just all, just this building. It's not one building on 85 acres. It's multiple uses.
Can you understand people who say that is great in terms of the green space, other
Yeah.
whatever y'all want to use
Huge
it for.
amount of it'd be the
But
it'll
other
be the
people
city's
say
largest park, by
right,
the way.
but people say, but I've heard and look, this is fair, I think. I don't want to take my kids on a picnic where there's some type of fire and police training and mock mass shooter drills and all that. Do you think that's a fair argument that just doesn't they shouldn't be adjacent to each other?
We can come up with every scenario why the city's biggest park right now, West Side Park, is literally the place where we have all our sewers and our water. This is where we collect our water, and I don't want to be next to a humongous pumping station
But
where Stranger Things.
with all due respect, Mayor, you know that's different.
Well, I know it's different, but I'm just saying that this is a tight space, so everything is kind of close to other things. People right now live right next to Hemp Hill, RM Clayton water facility over there on Bolton Road.
And maybe they had no
choice.
choice, and because particularly for specific communities, and you want to go back 40 and 50 years when
20.
when it comes to landfills and all other kinds of stuff, some communities have no control out of trying to get those things out of their community.
Right.
So you understand the importance when a community says, here's something that we think is detrimental to our community. Not saying we don't need it, just
But you
not
are
here.
saying the community as if it's one voice that Rose is projecting right now, because I literally talked to folks who said,
You told me it was
"Bring on."
69% that would be one voice that you can't even support the data that it's
60
from.
No, I can support it, and I can also tell you that 69 is not the whole community that you just said. When someone says these folks don't want it, you literally can make a phone call right now to community leaders and community members there that say, I am ready. I have understood it. I have reviewed everything.
Is there a
But
percentage
can we admit that there are not?
Let me ask you
This
this
is not
then.
wide scale.
Is there a percentage that you think is fair for you all to rethink whether or not this facility should be there?
There has been a whole conversation about that we are currently in, and I'm still in. Let me just make this reminder to everyone. One, this was voted on by the city council. Two, the
Which
EPD,
you were part of, and you've admitted that you voted for it. I just want to be clear, because sometimes folks tune in, they don't hear the right stuff.
Yeah. So I voted for it as a city council member. The EPD gave us an approval to do this. The DeKalb County Planning has reviewed this for a year, said we could do it. Members of some legal folks said, hey, we filed an injunction. The lawyer said, the court said, nope, we throw out that injunction. So now Fulton County, DeKalb County, the EPD all said you can do this. I could have started yesterday or the day before started, but I said, let's do a task force. Here we are right now having a conversation where community members are going to get together,
Why didn't you
provide
do this
meaningful
earlier,
input.
though?
We did do it earlier. It's called the Community Stakeholder Advisory Committee.
That was the first one.
But you just said we didn't do it
No,
earlier. I'm trying to let
there
you
were
know
two.
that
There were two.
those individuals are the ones that said, here's what we like to see. And those things have been implemented. We like sidewalks in our community. Yes, let's get you some sidewalks on Key Road. We'd like to move the firing range from here to over there. Let's do that.
This Community Stakeholder Advisory Committee, which was the first one,
but they're still on. They're still going right
and then
now.
you've got the South River Forest and Public Safety Training Center Community Task Force.
That's the new one that we're building to have
Are you
more
still-
people input. Yes.
Are you
we're
still
gonna have
listening
both.
to the first committee?
Yes, because these are not different.
And everybody agrees?
This just got announced today. I don't believe that all these. I asked for people that agree and disagree to be a part of it.
If they
And
come,
they all 41 people said, I want to be a part of this.
being a part is one thing, but agreeing to what you want, because you say you are in agreement, you agree with this facility being in this community. When I ask you again before I let you go, because I
Yeah.
want to be very clear that you can be clear to listeners in the community.
Mhm.
If they come back and say, Mayor, let's find another place for this, is that all that you need to then make the decision to terminate the lease agreement?
So the clarity on that is that has not occurred even with the people that's been in the community stakeholder advisory committee, which are the people that live right next to this. That has not been their vote. They have told us to move the firing range, to make sure that there's a 100-foot tree buffer. They've asked us to make sure that they have access to the community buildings to be able to utilize it for themselves, to have access to the pavilions. They've given us things to do, and we've said yes to it. They have not they have not done what you just said. But if that is the case, I will listen to that thoroughly. But let me also make sure that I'm clear as well, that if there's another place that we could put this that is within a place that a half-mile distance of this, that that set of neighbors won't say the same thing and we'll be right back here. And if we are also aware that we do not currently have a place for our police officers to train to do all these things, we're using Atlanta Metropolitan State College right now, which is a college facility that would like their classroom space to be utilized for that. But and which we can't go there at night and various things because that's what they're there for college. Our firefighters are going far away to go, learn how to be firefighters. And so all of this, we can dilly-dally and move around these conversations as much as we want to, but I'm letting you know that at some point, the city of Atlanta, that has the largest police force, that has the largest fire force, that has the largest amount of people to protect, needs to have implementation of a training that they can count on, that people can depend on.
And no one, to my knowledge, has said it should not
Oh,
happen.
Rose, this is a lot of defunders out
Well,
there. Defund the police folks.
and
When
remember
you say
now,
when you say no one,
well, what I mean is no one is, to me, the real issue is where this facility is going to be located. That is the issue in terms of the community from what we've been covering.
well, Rose,
And
I
then,
also
and
say
then
that
also, and then also too,
Mhm.
how much personnel are you going to have to keep taking away from these other zones? Folks in Buckhead, folks in Southeast Atlanta, East Atlanta, everywhere. You're going to take officers from their communities because they have to patrol this because you have, as you all call them, domestic terrorists, which is APD equipped to handle that? You putting a lot of resources in an area which one might argue you could alleviate that if you just move the facility somewhere else where it is not near a residential area.
I don't know, Rose. There's a lot of people that have said, not a lot of people, but there's individuals that have protested us that act like they were going to a music festival and they changed their clothes in the woods and started throwing Molotov cocktails and fireworks at people and destroying equipment.
And they were wrong for that.
They are wrong for that. Whether
I
they do
pushed the
that in
protester on
Atlanta,
that, they were wrong for that.
all right. They burned tires and called themselves environmentalists. They have destroyed equipment that would then leak oil into and fire all into the soil. But yet they say to you from their Vermont and Florida and other place homes that they care about Atlanta's environment.
Move them out the way.
No. That's what the
You know
police
what I'm
had
saying?
to do.
But what I'm
Yeah.
saying, move them out the way of this conversation. I want to talk about the community, what's in the best interest of the community.
Yeah.
Because
Why
there
don't I
is
come
a
on here with
split.
the neighborhood?
Bring them all. Bring it.
We should do that. We come on here with the neighborhood,
And you
not
want
the folks that live
I ain't talking
somewhere else.
you know I ain't talking about that.
No,
I'm talking about
I'm
the
talking about folks that
community.
don't even live in that part of the city or
The community.
or the cab
The
county.
community. But
Yeah.
you as the mayor.
Yeah.
And I did about how many debates with y'all?
I don't know. I came out on top.
But every one of you all, you as a mayor, you all say we're going to put the city of Atlanta first. So if you have a split in opinion about this facility,
Mhm.
I want you to come on here and talk about the process for getting through that. And how do you work through that? And do you get to a point where you say, and I'm asking you again, if there's a recommendation that this facility should not be in this community, will you consider something else?
So, I mean, we talked about the lease. I've answered these over and over with you. So I say, yes, we're open to discussions. That's why I got a task force. This task force is made up of professionals. It's been published. You got NAACP, you got U.S. Protection Agency, you got ACLU, you got uh, Chattahoochee Brick Company, Georgia State, Morehouse, Center for Civil and Human Rights, Park Pride, Nature Conservancy,
In
clergy.
terms of the people on the committee.
Yeah, these are people on the committee, and this is next to the people that are also the community members that live nearby.
Who put the folk on the committee? I'm just curious.
So we sent out an email to several people. These are, these organizations, and we said, we want your input. And some of them were just the people, and some of them were the organizations, and they could choose who they wanted.
So again, they agreed to be on it, but you have no idea what their recommendations are going to be.
I have no idea what their recommendations are going to be. I don't know if they're for it, against it. We are people that I take input very seriously. I've been a community member much longer than I've been mayor. I've been, really instrumental in diversity, equity, and inclusion in my professional career. I've been somebody who's a neighborhood president, an NPU leader.
You draw circles. You bring people together.
I'm going to make sure that I hear everything that people say, which is why I personally go knock on doors and ask the community, even in the cab company. I asked permission of CEO Michael Thurman, a good man, and Larry Johnson, the commissioner. He was walking with me as we knocked on doors, and we plan to do more of that.
Speaking of which, Michael Thurman, CEO Michael Thurman, has called a press conference because he is telling folks that the entrenchment camp, that whole area, is dangerous and they should stay away from it. There is a press conference going to be held today at 2:00. Were you aware of that?
No, not that there was a press conference at 2:00. It's 1:45 right now, so I'll be sure to tune in.
You might hear some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if Michael Thurman's talking, I'm listening.
All right. Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens, thank you so much for taking time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you, listeners.
Bring the community.
I'm bringing them out. Bring them out.
Bring them.